Okay, so heads up, I'm in a very good mood, but not the kind of mood that I want to make a normal review. I want to make it a little bit more entertaining today, just because I want to have some fun as well, but still informative. And I also actually even think that a normal review of an iPhone or a review in general of an iPhone makes no sense. Because just think about it for 1 second. If you are an iOS user and you want to buy an iPhone, well, what are you gonna buy? An iPhone, right? I mean, there is no real alternative. You can go bigger with the Max, you can go bigger but cheaper with the 10R, or you can go regular size with the 10S. That's pretty much it. And that's why I also think that all those videos comparing an iPhone with an Android phone are also pointless, because those are made so that one side feels worse or better than the other one. But you definitely won't convince an iOS user to switch to an Android phone or vice versa with these kind of videos. That's not a thing. And that's why also my normal kind of review would make no sense today, because what I would tell you is what I told you last year, but saying that this got better, this got better, this got better. So I'm still going through my normal categories, but I'm trying to give you what I think now about 2 weeks later, where I have to say that I like iOS on a phone a lot more than I did last year, because I learned a lot of stuff. You still have to transition quite a lot from Android to an iOS device. I mean, I love iOS on my iPads, but it's still something very different on a phone. Not that I'm gonna switch anytime soon, but still, I definitely kinda get now why people like it, but let's talk about that a little bit later on, and let's get into the design build quality. So what I wanna talk about first is the size. This is what I like on the regular sized one, because it is smaller, because every other Android phone these days is at least as big as this one. And not everyone likes this, so that's why I like the compact in-hand feel. I mean, obviously, what I still don't like so much is that you have to stretch and make so many finger gymnastics on an iOS phone, which is a little bit odd because you have to swipe. And the phone is so heavy, if you swipe this, and the balance, because it feels like it's flipping over all the time, and you have to reach to the top, and obviously there is this gesture to make it easier, but still, it felt to me in my normal use that I have to switch from the left, for example, if I don't come back, and it felt a little bit odd. And I was just always in fear that all with those movements, sometimes I will just flip it out of my hand. But that's just, for example, one side besides, for example, the build quality. Because all the Apple devices that I've used so far had this kind of attention to detail when it comes to smoothness on sides. And for example, now the glass doesn't properly align and there are some sharp edges. Doesn't take away from the great in-hand feel. I mean, I have to just give it to that. Also, for example, the buttons. There is no wiggling at all and nothing else. And we don't really have to talk about anything here, because obviously the camera still protrudes, there is still a notch and so on. But I mean, we got that already last year, so I really talk more about that. Besides maybe the fact that I still think that those side bezels are just too big. I mean, I kind of get why. So they are very symmetrical all over, but they feel just too big. Now, when it comes to the display, all I can say is here that it is a very good display, but I'm missing the wow factor. I mean, it's extremely bright, and I was actually shocked when I measured it and measured 1200 lux. This is even brighter than the G7, which is impressive. But this display isn't, because, for example, for some reason, even if I push the brightness very high, there is something about this display, because it feels to me like it has less glare than some other displays these days. It feels like it's a little bit more muted, maybe to avoid or also improve sunlight readability, which is a cool thing. I mean, I have to give it to that. But therefore, this display also, even though it looks very natural in terms of colors and very accurate and so on, looks a little bit maybe too natural. And I have to say, I don't like at all that we have this kind of true tone color, because I mean, it looks like, for me, like the display is pissed all the time, and that makes me pissed. But I mean, you can turn it off if you don't like it. I know it's supposed to mimic white paper, but I don't like it, because the normal calibration is absolutely satisfying, and it is a beautiful display, absolutely great viewing angles and everything else, but this little bit impressiveness, like for example the XE3 or the the Samsung Note 9 has, I'm missing here. But like I said, don't want to really compare it here, so let's switch to the next part, which would be the speaker system. I mean, bottom one and the one on the earpiece. And one thing that I definitely noticed in comparison to any other Android phone is that the earpiece is noticeably louder, and therefore the stereo effect seems better, but I think you still have to kind of cup it so you get the best effect. And yes, it's a very loud speaker, good stereo separation and so on, but it also distorts on the last two levels, which I didn't notice on the 10 last year. So I'm not quite sure what that is all about. Not a real big thing, because still one of the best speakers. After all, even though it sounds not quite as full and rich like it did last year, but that might be just in my head. What is not in my head and not in the phone is the headphone jack. It's just not there, and I actually forgot to order the dongle here, so I can't tell you how good that is. Normally it's fine from what I remember last year, so that's that. Performance-wise, all I can tell you is that I'm not really impressed, because I still see a lot of lag, and I've talked with a few other people that have one, and they said that they don't see any of that. But for example, if I go into the YouTube app, I mean, it's still, to me, obviously the YouTube Studio app is a poorly optimized app, but I mean, this is not what I meant, but it stutters, as you can see here, quite often. But I've seen this also on Instagram, and it's mostly a third party thing, I have to say, because if you go, for example, in the browser, usually super nice and smooth, and it feels very fluid. But I've also just noticed one thing that I think you can't deny. The speed of the scrolling on an iOS phone is just artificially limited, so it has to be smooth, because this is never as fast as it can be on an Android phone, because just look at it. This is always this one speed. You can't do something like you can do on an Android phone. For example, here, this is way faster. I mean, not a problem, because yes, nice and smooth, but still, I see some stutters, and I'm not blown away. I mean, it's kind of fast, even though it does never really feel fast due to the animations. I mean, you can get rid of them, but it's not really making anything faster. They're just gone, the animations. But yeah, totally fine for normal use. But for this price, everything just should be stutter free. And I mean, even if those apps aren't super optimized, which is kind of what I get, yeah, I mean, it should just run. I mean, even with this performance that we have, and even if the app isn't super optimized, it should run, in my opinion, just better. But I really like one thing which makes things so much more convenient, like for example the swipes for the less apps, but that's something about the software later on. So let's talk about the battery. And I know there is a lot to talk about, because everyone has an issue that there is no quick charger inside, and I get it. I mean, yes, 2 hours and 50 or 45 for a full charge is quite long, but then again, you will use, at least many people do, use an iPhone longer period of time, and you don't want to charge it too fast, because it will just eliminate the battery a little bit faster, because it won't just hold up as much. Obviously, I said the same thing on the XE3 already. Give me the option. Give me the option to charge quick if I need to, because if I charge like 30% in half an hour, that's not really good. Even though I have to say one thing, the battery life on this one, especially since the battery isn't really big, is way better than I expected, because I got about 5.5, if not even maybe sometimes 6 hours on mobile data. Okay, maybe not compared to an Android phone, so much more on Android, because there the gap is bigger, but there I got maybe like 7.5 hours. But still, for this size of a phone, and let's just think about it, 6 hours on mobile data, or 5.5 is what I get on a phone here. That has a way bigger battery, also a bigger screen, but I get it. But I mean, super nice and efficient. Standby rate is absolutely amazing. We know that from iOS. So yeah, but talking about iOS, the software, I mean, yeah, it still looks like it looks, because I mean, the customizability is amazing. You can rearrange all your icons and... No, wait, that's it. No, wait, you can't change the wallpaper. But I mean, you can't even drag any icon that you want at some certain place. They all are always aligning, and yeah, not really like that so much. But what I, for example, like is that it shows me the screen on time now, even in sections, how many activations I got, how many messages. I like that, but that's pretty much, at least for me, just useful for a reviewer. I personally wouldn't care so much about that in normal use, but I mean, I'm not going to show anything here, because, I mean, iOS, I guess you know it from whatever. But I have to say, a few things just work out a little bit quirky, and I'm still not 100% used to it. Because, for example, last time I wanted to just put a signature on a PDF and send that one. And this was an action that takes me on Android maybe like a couple of seconds, because all I have to do is make the signature and just send it away. But on iOS, from someone who isn't really used to an iOS workflow, it was a cumbersome experience, and both times I needed like 10 minutes or so. I mean, obviously, if you use it for a longer period of time, you know those quirks, and you all know all the rest. But I mean, the swipe gesture, for example, I really like how those work, because especially if you, for example, want quick and easy access from one app to the other, I love the swipe. I mean, the way this works is great. And then, for example, swiping to this one, I still would wish for a back swipe option that is not on the left side and works always, because this now doesn't do anything, because I haven't really entered anything. I mean, I get it now, but why can't I go now back and maybe go out of the app? Maybe completely something you don't do on Android, but on iOS. But all I'm gonna say is, I can get used to it. I can like it. Not a huge issue. I mean, it's usable after all. It's very, very different in some aspects, especially if you want to go a little bit more in depth on Android and rooted and all those things. You definitely miss out on things here, obviously, but then you can jailbreak and so on if that's actually even still a thing. But what you have to give iOS is updates. You get them for so long, and if you want to pay so much money for a phone, if you want to lose it for long, then you should get the updates. So that's super sweet. But camera-wise, what's there to say? And I kind of actually knew that this review won't be that much different from any other one, because I always fall back in my normal behavior. Normal behavior also for the camera app. I mean, you can swipe between the modes. And yeah, switch between that. Oh, I'm calling someone, I think. Whoops. Yeah, good thing that my brother never actually answers the phone. Okay, so yeah, that was definitely my mistake. So let's get back into the camera. Everything is easily convenient. I mean, you get it, all the modes. Yeah, let's take a look at the results. Even though I have to say, I actually heavily cut down the samples because I could talk for half an hour about this cam, but I don't want to in this review to keep it still casual. So I have to say the front-facing camera is amazing. I absolutely love it. But sometimes for some reason, I mean, this doesn't look like it's actually smoothing, but it does, because this is not how my skin looks like. So sometimes it looks artificial. But I have to say, when it doesn't have this effect, and I'm not quite sure how to turn it off, especially the video here. I mean, just look at this. This is 1080p 60. Looks so detailed. Looks so right in terms of colors. So smooth. Actually even stabilized. Oh yeah, there's some crop. Okay, I get it. Okay, some weird kind of exposure changes, but I mean, yeah, I'm so pleased with the front-facing cam. Also, for example, in the dark, there is actually where the camera definitely falls apart. For example, without a flash, even with a flash, I mean, the moment you go a little bit closer, you see the picture gets totally, yeah, it totally falls apart. Especially here, for example, as well. I mean, I haven't really organized those pictures like I usually do, but as you can see, this is like the picture looks normal daylight. This is how it looks at dark, and this is how it looks with a flash. Here, for example, the same. Also here. But I still have to say low light does not impress me, but actually just does disappoint me, because look at this. The moment you zoom in, it falls apart. And that's the biggest issue of this camera. In low light situations, it's... With the flash, okay, yeah, absolutely. But without the flash, especially on video, it just does not deliver, which is so sad, because in normal situations like here, for example, super sharp, super detailed, the autofocus works great, the colors are nice. For example, here with HDR also, even improves the picture even more so. I mean, also, for example, once again, the samples here, yeah, the bokeh mode is supposed to work very well. For me, it did not so much. With my weird hair, it cuts that off all the time. But still, the pictures, the quality is great, but I have to say, even better than just the video, I mean the photos on the front-facing cam, I just prefer the video so much. And then here you can once again see that low light just destroys it. And then, for example, here also inside, the picture is just so good. And if something stuttered, then it's actually my PC, because the HEIC, and here you can see low light. I mean, this is bad. This is really, really bad. So I don't know why it over-processes so much in darker situations, because just look at this video. This is amazing. This is absolutely top. And then again, pictures, yeah, that just look okay. I'm not sure what else to say. And this is actually the weirdest part. For example, here where I stand, those pictures look completely off. And I had no idea what was happening. And then I just stepped one step forward and the picture looks like this. I mean, a camera can't just make a pic like this and then like this just if you step actually backwards. I mean, that is just weird. But yeah, like I said, otherwise the pictures, I love the quality. The main camera is freaking fantastic. Absolutely. Super detailed. Pretty much nails it all the time. So what else is there to say? Video. 4K 60, obviously you don't see 4K 60 since this video is just 1080p 60, but I'm a huge fan of the video camera. I mean, if you want to use a video camera a lot on a phone, I mean, this is the one to go for. You have 4K 60, actually feels very, very stable. It feels nice and smooth. Like I said, if it stutters, then it's my PC. And if you see some flickering, I don't know why that's happening. I didn't see that before. But the quality is top notch. The autofocus, even on macro, as you can see, so good. It feels so natural and stable. I mean, obviously, if you get it in a 1080p 30 or so, you have even higher stabilization. But that one to me feels a little bit unnatural. So I'm not going to go into any other samples because 4K 60, this is the way to go for. And I could show some other samples, but I don't think that's really necessary. So overall, camera, I mean, front-facing pictures, great. The video, in my opinion, even better. Main camera, great. The video, also amazing. Low light, whenever you do something, if it's video front-facing, main camera, or anything in lower light situations, this camera falls apart. This is where it loses so much out, because otherwise I would have maybe given this quite a couple of 5 gold stars. But then whenever you do something in the dark or darker situations, I just can't anymore. But that's that. So conclusion, should you buy it? I have no idea. I mean, in my opinion, no. But I wouldn't recommend anyone a €1,000 phone or a $1,000 phone. And if, I don't know, I mean, it's just too much in my opinion. And especially if you already have a 10, it makes no sense at all. If you have an 8, maybe, I don't know. But I have to say, like I said, the review isn't necessary. If you want an iPhone, you'll get an iPhone, no matter which one. If you want the newer one, get the newer one. I don't think that there is a huge difference from last year to this year. The display didn't perceivably got better. The speaker, for me, now seems to have distortion that it didn't have last year. Maybe a little bit of an unlucky situation here. Performance doesn't really seem any better. Battery life seems better, but that seems to be the case because of iOS 12 from what I heard. The camera is a little bit better, and all those little bit betters are not worth to upgrade from a 10 to a 10S. If you have something lower, sure, go for it. But, I mean, I'm not going to tell you, get a Note 9, it's so much better. Because, why? If you have invested into the ecosystem, you won't change just because the Note 9 does 1 or 2 things better. Because, is there something else to say? I mean, I like the system by now. I got used to it. I can do all my things. Now that I found an alternative for every app that I use, I'm fine. I could use this phone as my daily driver. I'm not going to because I like a little bit more customization. I like that, yeah, that I'm just used to it. I'm just used to it. And if you are used to an iPhone, go for it. I mean, it's not bad. I mean, it's super pricey. And I would actually like to say that this is an amazing $700 phone. But it doesn't cost $700. That's the issue. I mean, I think it's overpriced, even compared to Android competition, because you usually get a higher resolution, bigger display, or I don't know. Those are overpriced as well. But this one in particular for the 10S, which is, I mean, a little bit over 1080p, and all those kind of things, it's crazy expensive, especially if you go for a higher storage capacity version. I'm starting to stopping to make less sense.